bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
And good Monday morning, Birds fans. Welcome into Birds 365 with your Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald. Did you have a good weekend, Mr. McMullen?
Yeah, it was nice. How was yours, Jody? A little bit too hot, but back to normal today. I was like, what happened this morning? It's a little chilly, if anything.
Yeah, a little breeze when we got the dogs out this morning. Yeah. In honor of the hot weather, I decided to go with my Andy Reid looking best time.
There we go. Look at that.
Look, that summer has actually arrived. Forget spring. We didn't actually have spring. We went from fall straight through till summer this week with temperatures well into the 90s.
From the Paul Damo collection.
Damo's got a couple of these. I got a couple too. Not quite as nice as Andy Reid's, I'm sure, but thought we'd go a little relaxed since the summer weather is in. Before we know it, we'll get to Eagles camp. Summer weather being a key there. But before we even get into the football, we've got two good guests coming your way today. Want to give props to the Philadelphia Eagles as an organization. They had their autism challenge this weekend. We had Howard Eskin on with us last week. He gets out and rides. Has ridden all 5 years of the Eagles autism challenge, and did so again this week. He helped contribute to the raising of over $4 million. In the 5 years the Eagles have been doing the autism challenge, they've raised over $16 million for research to fight autism. A very worthy cause. Jeff Lurie, since the day bought the team, has been a very community-conscious owner and a very charitable and giving owner as well. And this is one of the big events that the Eagles have during the year, the Eagles Autism Challenge. And congrats and thanks to them for raising over $4 million this week.
Yeah, tremendous job. And that's one thing, that Jeffrey Lurie, I often talk about, look, I criticized him for some of the decisions regarding the football team. And that's part of the gig, so to speak. It's not a gig. He owns the team, but
it's a big gig is what it is.
and specifically most recently how they moved on from Doug Peterson. But one thing you can't criticize the Eagles for is the work they do in the community. And they're one of those teams. And I was back with Dennis Green when he called it Community Tuesdays, and he kind of started it around the NFL. He was the guy. One of the reasons I pushed for Denny Green to be in the Hall of Fame, but that's another conversation for another time. But sometimes people get caught up in the football part of it, understandable because people are passionate. But when you see things like that, it is really, gives you a moment to step back and say, there's bigger things than football, and the Eagles do a lot for this community. And they have done a lot since, as you mentioned, since Jeffrey Lurie really got here. And this is his passion. I mean, it's been his passion, autism, for years, and obviously has, it's affected his family. So, wonderful job. There's nothing else you can say about it except all positive.
And Jeff Lurie and the Eagles are the driving force, and they're the ones who organized this and collect all the funds and make sure it gets 100% to the proper people to put into effect what they want, which is to help find a cure and the treating of autism. But Howard Eskin et al. And all his buddies who went out there and either walked or ran or biked, they're as much a part of this as Jeff Lurie is, because they're the ones that are actually doing the work. It's only a one-day work. It's a pretty strenuous day of work with temperatures being what they were yesterday. Jeff Lurie and the organization are kind of dedicated to this 365 a year. But let us tip our cap to any of you who got out and participated in yesterday's Autism Challenge. We thank you as well. All right, let's do what we do, Johnny Mac, which is talk about the Philadelphia Eagles on the football team. No big moves this week. Not really a surprise. The Bradberry signing came down last week, which is, in my eyes, a major addition. And a couple of places where it's shown up. I did double check this weekend at least my Bet Parks app, where as per prior to Bradberry signing, the Eagles were still at 8.5 on their under-over for the season, which I got a little action when it was in there at 8.5. And after the Bradberry signing, I was going to jump back in and go a little bit harder at 8.5. It had gone up to 9.5. I don't know that James Bradberry was the lone reason for an additional game being added to their under-over for the season, but that's exactly what the facts were. It's probably a combination of things, and the movement on these numbers is a little fluid, can be influenced by a lot of different things. But the Eagles were actually up to 9.5 plus juice. A little heavier on the over than it was on the under, if that's the way you were looking to go. And certainly that was the way I was looking to go. The Eagles look like a minimum double-digit win team to me. So I did add a little bit more, but not as much as I was planning to, because I thought I was going in at 8.5, and it was up to 9.5. So the Eagles are getting more respect, more love, if you want to put it that way, around the National Football League. Earned, deserved. Are you surprised by the fact that this is the case?
I'm not surprised. That's an interesting word you use, earned. I don't think it's been earned. I don't think you can earn anything in May, but I do think, you mentioned you got in, before they signed James Bradberry. I thought that 8.5 number, I thought was a little bit strange. I thought it was a little bit low. So I think that has more to do with, a lot of people like you saying the same thing and saying, wow, that looks low. Let me get in on this while I can. In fact, I think we encouraged people to do that on the show when the schedule came out.
When we both went 11 wins.
Yeah. I looked at that number, and because all you have to do is look at last year and what they ended up last year, and surprising. And if anything, the schedule looks a little bit easier this year than last year, and it was pretty easy last year. So the schedule shouldn't be that big of an issue. There's some, you peel the onion back. We've talked about the 4 games on short weeks on the road. There's some hurdles, but overall, when you compare it to other schedules, not difficult in the NFL as far as that goes. So, yeah, I think it just makes sense. And now I'm to the point where, though, Jody, I think people are getting too excited. So I'm going to have the pendulum effect. I'm going to have to snap some people back to reality. So it kind of depends where you are. If you think this team is all of a sudden the legitimate Super Bowl contender, I'm not going to agree with you. Are they they're a playoff team already? I mean, you can argue bad schedule, surprise some teams. They didn't perform well in the playoffs. Certainly all those things are true, but the bottom line is they were a playoff team, and they've only gotten better from a talent standpoint. But there's still some holes, and I think I use that phrase all the time, skipping steps. I do think people are starting to skip steps and assuming this is all going to come together. And hey, hopefully it does. Maybe it does, but it's time to snap back a little bit and say some people are skipping some steps.
And the biggest question, of course, is the quarterback position. They've got a second-year starter who put up middling numbers last year and was dominated in a playoff game against a better football team with a better quarterback like Tampa Bay and Tom Brady. But that is going to be a question that will be answered by the time we get to the playoffs. You believe the Eagles are a playoff team with Jalen Hurts, and why wouldn't you? They were last year, and they've only improved. What's going to happen when the playoffs get here? We'll have the entire 17-game season to add to that judgment going in. And if you didn't get down on the Eagles at 9.5 this weekend, I'll check my app again here in just a second, but it's not coming back down because one of the forerunners in opinion generating media opinions came out this weekend and had a pretty good review of the Philadelphia Eagles. I respect John McMullen as one of the best football writers in the country. One of the very few that I would actually put ahead of him would be Peter King.
That's okay, Jeff.
And Peter King writes now for NBC, and you catch his Monday morning column on Pro Football Talk on the website. He came out with his 2022 NFL power ratings, which I give him credit for because this is the time you should come out with it. Wait till after the draft, give a couple of weeks into free agency. Guys like James Bradberry being picked up by the Philadelphia Eagles, still big free agent moves. Most of them have taken place. Jadeveon Clowney went back to the Browns this week. But this is the time of year. This is the week, as a matter of fact, that I think if you're going to do power ratings, and all power ratings is a beauty contest, beauty in the eye of a beholder, what you think is going to happen. It doesn't designate anything, doesn't generate anything. It just gives you an informed opinion on how things are going to shake out in the National Football League. And Peter King put his power ratings up this morning. He readily admits last year, not a great year for Peter King in the power ratings. He had the Rams, I believe it was 6th overall coming into the season. They win a championship. He had Cincinnati 27th. Oh, Peter, you weren't alone there. Nobody had Cincinnati going to the Super Bowl, so don't beat yourself up too much about that one. But I had him 27th overall, and they're your 2 Super Bowl teams. So he said last year wasn't great. The year before you'd done actually pretty well. Have you seen Peter King's power ratings yet, John McMullen?
I had not, so I just pulled them up when you were talking.
That's
Jody.
too bad. I wanted to ask you. I wanted to quiz you on them. Since you have them in front of you, I'll give them to our streamers. 3 AFC teams at the top. Not a surprise. Most people believe the AFC is the more dominant conference. The first NFC team, the Rams, the defending Super Bowl champions at number 4. The Aaron Rodgers-led Packers at number 5. The former champions of football, the 2020 champions, Tom Brady, returning to action for his Tampa Bay Bucks 6th. And 4th in the AFC, as the 9th power-ranked team in the National Football League, the Philadelphia Eagles. Only 3 teams in the NFC does he rank higher: Rams, Packers, Bucks. Behind the Eagles at 10th, the San Francisco 49ers. Behind the 49ers at 11th, the New Orleans Saints, which I rank a little higher than Johnny Mac does. He takes shots at Mickey Loomis whenever given a chance.
Yeah, that's a little high for me, Joe.
Yeah, I it's even a slightly high for me, but not as high for me as it is for you. And at 15th in the NFC, 15th overall, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8th in the NFC, the Dallas Cowboys at 15th. He's got the Eagles at 9th and the Cowboys at 15th. We asked the question last week, have the Eagles caught the Cowboys? According to Peter King, they've caught the Cowboys. They've passed the Cowboys. They've damn near lapped the Cowboys if the Eagles are 9th and the Cowboys are 15th. Peter King's on the Eagle train, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, he is. And that's, it's another example of where we're going. Look, we had Jason Cole on the show last week, and I asked him that same thing. I think it's pretty clear. Peter and I certainly agree on the top 3 teams in the NFC, and whatever order you want to put them in, I wouldn't argue, to be honest. And that's the Rams, the Packers, and the Bucks. I think he can make arguments for all to be the best team in the NFC. And those to me, and then there's a drop off to number 4. And Cole went immediately to the 49ers, which is probably correct. I talk all the time about my respect for Kyle Shanahan, but there's some concern over the quarterback position there. And that's about it, by the way. So, Trey Lance turns into what they think Trey Lance can be. All of a sudden, that's a really, really good football team. And if they have to go with Jimmy Garoppolo, they're going to have to win the same way they sort of won last year. And it's going to be more game manager, more blood and guts football, more running the football, more physicality. But they can do that. They've proven they can do that with a Super Bowl run and a pretty deep playoff run as well over the past couple of seasons. So I don't know. That's an example to me of skipping steps, what I was talking about. I can't say the Eagles are better than that team right now. Dallas is the most interesting one, obviously. And I think on paper, I've described it like this. I think the Eagles have the best roster of those two teams from 2 to 52, as we say, but they have the better quarterback. So, and I would say they also have the bigger playmakers, especially on the defensive side of the ball. When you talk about Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence and Trevon Diggs, guys who make those big splash plays. I've talked about making the splash plays. We got to see. Now, the Eagles have some potential to now develop players like that. But again, we have to see it. I can make that argument that the Eagles are better than the Cowboys. I think, as I said, they have more overall talent now. Then when you go down from there, Minnesota's an interesting team to me because they can go either way to me, because it's all going to be about the head coach. And I go back to Matt Nagy's first year in Chicago when he won 12 games. I could see Minnesota doing that because they have enough talent, especially with, Jefferson and Thielen and Cook and Hunter, and they still Eric Kendricks and on and on and on. Or, he could be out of his depth as a rookie head coach, and they can go the opposite way. So I'm not going to argue that the Eagles should be ahead of them. The two interesting teams, one AFC, but we're sticking with the NFC. Arizona at 22. I don't know. I can't do that. I mean, I have a lot of problems with Arizona. A lot of problems. Starting with the head coach. I don't think he's a very good head coach. I don't think he belongs in this league. I think it was a reach when they did him. But they won a lot of football games because they have a lot of talent. And it starts with the quarterback. It might be a pain in the you-know-what, but he can make a lot of plays. And when you start talking about the Arizona Cardinals and saying, well, they don't do this in the playoffs and they falter down the stretch of the season. Oh, yeah, but they're there, though, because they're winning games early because they got more players than you do. And Kyler Murray's capable of just, really putting up some big numbers, both throwing the football, running the football, just making plays all over the place. That is way low for me for Arizona. So, there's some things, but I can see where Peter's going. His thought process is, well, the coach isn't very good. They're having troubles with the quarterback. Maybe they take a step back, but maybe the talent takes over and Kyler Murray's Kyler Murray and they win a lot of games again.
Right. Peter King's making a prediction with that ranking. He thinks Kyler Murray isn't going to be the quarterback for the Cardinals. Who's the Cardinal backup quarterback, John?
That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, well,
know. I don't know. That answers the question. If you think Kyler Murray is going to say, no contract extension, I'll just sit at home. Thank you very much. Which, remember, he was drafted in the first round of the baseball draft, went and played a couple minutes of minor league baseball and said, see you later, A's, and decided to go up to the National Football League, which was a pretty good decision on his part. But he's not afraid to walk away when he thinks he's being either mistreated or there's a better situation out there for him. So for me, I read into that Peter King thinks that Kyler Murray's not going to necessarily be quarterbacking the Arizona Cardinals.
Well, I if that's his thought, and I didn't read the little quip of what he said about the team. If he actually has that
I didn't
in there,
either, but that's the only way you can rank him as low as
yeah,
he's ranking
I mean,
him.
that's
And he didn't just make that up out of whole cloth. Kyler Murray said he's not showing up for camp until he gets his contract redone.
By the way, it's Colt McCoy and Trace McSorley, the ex-Penn State.
There you go.
And
That's
Colt
huge.
McCoy is actually a pretty good backup, but yeah, I mean, he can't. I mean, number one, I disagree with Peter. That's his thinking. I mean, he's going to play. He's not going to walk away. And ultimately, he's going to get his money. It's just a matter of where and when. And I assume it's going to be Arizona, but we'll see how that shakes out. Obviously, if he doesn't play, yeah, they're not going to be a very good football team. To bet on that, we were talking about bets and betting on over 8.5. I wouldn't bet on that. I wouldn't bet on somebody walking away from their career at the height of their career with all the money that they know is coming down the road. Might you be a little bit disappointed that you don't get it? Is it, immediacy? Yeah, perhaps. But if Kyler Murray doesn't play for the Arizona Cardinals this year, I would be stunned.
Doesn't happen often, but it does happen. Ask Carson Palmer that a quarterback take a hardline stance about not liking their contract and not reporting to play football. All right, we are the Mac and Mac guys here on Bird 365. Got our first guest waiting in the green room. Had some very interesting posts over the weekend on his outstanding Eagles website, Bleeding Green Nation. The publisher and editor thereof, Brandon Lee Gowton, joins us next here on Birds 365.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Android TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
The big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
In Philadelphia, we celebrated the miracle with pride only 5 years ago. And then the following morning, IBEW Local 98 members went back to work, building this city, rescuing our communities from decay, and inspiring the young men and women of the region to take pride in who we are. Like the Cats, Local 98 members believe in hope.
To learn more about who we are, what we do, and career opportunities with Local 98, visit us, IBEW98.org.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass. Free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit. Glasses for cocktails, right?
It's for this, 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 and that.
Is the length of the glass equal to your...
You betcha.
But is it made out of...
Glass?
Yeah, okay, but is the rip...
Smooth?
Will you stop doing...
That?
I'm the professional here.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. 1 free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. All from the company that's highly awarded. 0 carbs, 0 sugar, and deliciously tasting vodka. So good, it just disappears.
It is another Eagles Talk week here on Bird 365 as we get another week closer to the 2022 Philadelphia Eagles season with people are excited about is we're talking about it here. We are bringing a third voice into the mix. He is the publisher and editor of Bleeding Green Nation and a frequent contributor here, and we always learn something whenever we bring BLG, Brendan Lee Gowton, into the mix. How are you, big guy?
I'm doing great. How's it going, guys?
Hey, BLG, good to see you. I love it. There, we did it. We did the RVD thing. I don't know if you heard while you were in the green room, but Jody and I were discussing Peter King's power rankings and all. But and I kind of mentioned I want to see where you are with this, Brandon. I've noticed this incredible sea change started day one of the draft, where people went from, all right, this Eagles team isn't ready for this, isn't ready for that, till now we're there, we're right there, it's ready to go. And Peter had them as 9th in the NFL, 4th in the NFC. Do you think people are starting to skip steps? Now we've had this huge pendulum, like this team is bang right there and better than the Dallases of the world and the San Franciscos and the Arizonas. Skipping steps or not, BLG?
I think when you look at the context of the division, obviously it's easy to point to the Eagles maybe trending up, whereas opposed to the Cowboys, I think are very much trending not so much up. I think they've gotten worse this offseason in a lot of ways. I think it's hard to say how Dallas has gotten better in any way. But at the same time, the Eagles haven't exactly owned the Cowboys, and until they can actually beat, and in fact, when Jalen Hurts has started against Dallas, it's only 2 times, both blowout losses. So the Eagles very much have to prove they're the team to beat in the NFC East. But I think when you combine, the schedule release into the mix here too, and the Eagles have obviously one of the easiest, if not like the easiest schedule in the NFL, just based on the teams they're playing and the quarterbacks they're playing. And you look at how they've improved in a lot of ways. There's plenty of cases for optimism. No team is going to have a perfect roster, so I get they have the hole at safety. But I guess the one thing for me that still remains a big question mark, and Peter King, I believe, did say in his rankings, he mentioned Jalen Hurts being like a C+ quarterback, and your ceiling is only so high when you have that kind of player.
No, at least he gets it to 9th, because that's where Peter has him, even with a C+ quarterback. BLG, I'm not as worried about the Eagles fans jumping the gun a little bit and pushing the needle a little too fast off the offseason they've had, and just judging where they fall in comparison to the other teams in the NFC. Here's the one area where I do think they've gotten a little ahead of themselves, and maybe it's Howie Roseman bringing it on himself because he's had as good an offseason as he's had. They get a little greedy, at least here on our stream and on my Twitter. Jesse Bates. Now we got to get Jesse Bates. We can get Jesse Bates. All we got to do is give up a package and we'll be able to get you. Let's add Jesse Bates. They've done such a good job of checking the boxes and filling the holes and acquiring the players they have. They think anyone is now within reach. There's no chance they're going to be able to get a guy like Jesse Bates, is there?
I wouldn't say no chance. You look at the Bengals' history of paying players; they're not exactly, the team to rush to pay guys. Notoriously not big spenders. So, and you look at the fact that his age too, I believe, is only 24, 25. Like that could be a long-term piece for this team. It's not like you're selling out for a guy who's 29 or so and might, you might be paying beyond his prime years. So I think it's possible. I don't know, likely. I think Eagles fans and every fan base kind of gets into a mode in the offseason where, there's that one hot name out there, and it was Bradberry for a while, and I didn't think the Eagles were going to get him, but they did. But then it's like, okay, we got him. Now it's the next thing. It's always, you're moving on to the next name that's out there. So I think part of it's that.
The Bradberry signing, Brandon, when you look at how the Eagles were able to get it done, a little bit over $7 million in guaranteed money, typical voidable years, Howie contract, where it's going to be less than 2.3 on the salary cap. What does that tell you? Now the timing tells you a lot. The calendar, it's not a great time for Bradberry to hit the open market, but I thought he'd get a little bit more than that. Is that a little reason to press pause on James Bradberry?
Well, yeah, I don't think this is like a Pro Bowl. I know he was in the Pro Bowl a couple years ago, but I don't know that, he's going to be a Pro Bowl player for the Eagles. I think, obviously there were a lot of financial reasons why the Giants moved on from him. But if he was still kind of like an all-pro, Pro Bowl kind of player, they either would have kept him probably, or they would have had a better market for him and might have been able to trade him a little bit more easier, with teams really trying to make sure they got him and didn't just let him go to free agency. So, I think he's coming off a season where he missed like something like 12 tackles, a lot of missed tackles. He had the worst passer rating allowed of his last 4 years. It was still good. It was like in the 90s. It wasn't terrible or anything. But point being, like, he's not coming off his strongest year. So, I don't know that the Eagles are getting an incredible player, but that's fine. I mean, if he's a really good starting cornerback, or just even a good starting cornerback, then, it's a fine contract. And you can figure out if you want to re-sign him after this year or let him walk and maybe help your comp pick formula. So, overall, I think, it fills a big hole on the Eagles defense and really kind of helps further eliminate any excuses for Jonathan Gannon. I think the defense arguably underperformed their talent level last year. If that happens again, I think the way to frame it is like Jonathan Gannon shouldn't be here next year, because either he did a great job, he's going to get hired as someone else's head coach, or he underperformed and he shouldn't be back another season.
Yeah, I think both you guys are underrating James Bradberry. That's why I was beating the drum as loudly as I was prior to their signing to get this done. I think he got a fair contract for joining the free agent fray at this time of the year. I think the Eagles paid fair market value for him, not above and beyond, but not below. I don't think they got a bargain either. I think he is a borderline Pro Bowl quarterback, which I'll take him over Zach McPherson every day of the week and twice on Sundays. So you have to put it in the context of who he's replacing in the Eagles lineup. I thought it was a hell of a signing for Howie Roseman. But again, yes, have some concerns that the Eagles think that now they can do anything. Eagle fans get a little carried away. What have we got? James Bradberry, why can't we get Jesse Bates? Yeah, they're not going to be able to pay the price. It's going to be at least a first-round draft pick to be able to get your hands on Bates in a trade, right? You don't think the Eagles would give up one of those 2 draft picks. They love the safety net they have for next year going into a draft where they may need to take a quarterback. If that's the price, they're not going there, are they, Brandon?
Right. Yeah. I don't think they want to part with a first for that. Like you said, I think they have those earmarked for a quarterback if they need it. Obviously, if Jalen Hurts plays really well, great. Then they don't have to do that. But I definitely think they're holding that in their back pocket. I wonder if they can put a package that might be strong enough without a first round pick, like, maybe some kind of second and like an Isaac Sumalo. The Eagles obviously have a lot of offensive line depth. We know the Bengals could use some offensive line help. So maybe there's something that can get done there. Obviously, I think some of this comes down to a sense of maybe how dug in Jesse Bates is with the Bengals, and like, is he really just not going to play and kind of really forces his way out of there and puts Cincy kind of in a bad spot. So yeah, again, I would say it's less than 50% chance, he gets traded to the Eagles, but I would say, it's above like 10, somewhere in there.
Yeah, one of the reasons, because I've heard Isaac a couple times with Cincinnati, and it makes sense from the perspective that was their big issue, obviously, the offensive line, even though they made it to the Super Bowl. But I do think it's kind of funny to think that, all right, one of the reasons he might be available, Jesse Bates, is that the Bengals are the Bengals and they don't want to pay players, right? And then we say, well, give him Isaac, who's really expensive for a guard who doesn't play. So I'm not sure that's as natural a fit as people would assume, because again, it's the Bengals, so they probably don't want that contract either. Off base there?
I think the Sumalo thing, just kind of taking it in his future, is interesting, especially when Herbig was still here. I guess maybe it's more likely that he stays now that Herbig is gone. But I thought with Herbig here, it's like they have all these bodies on the interior offensive line. And Sumalo is basically going to be a free agent after this season. And he's only played in like 9 games or so. Yeah, the past 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Yeah, so that's not great. And he's going to be like 29 or so. So, you kind of have to decide, like, is this a guy you want to pay? Is he here for the long haul? Is it worth keeping him just the year? And it might be. It's obviously good to have a lot of offensive line depth and guys who can play multiple positions like he can. But I think it is interesting to think about his future. I feel like, it's him.
Oh, yeah. I think the Eagles would like to probably move on from that contract. but I'm not sure the Bengals side of it would make much sense because of the way they do business. And that's one of the reasons we said, well, maybe you can pry Jesse Bates away because, the Bengals drafted a safety and they can go the cheaper route. And that's typically the way they do things. But then again, on the back end of that, you probably don't want Isaac's contract after playing just 9 games in 2 years. From the Bengals' perspective, I don't think it's a match.
Unless it's just like, a case of a team overcorrecting a little bit. It's like, well, the offensive line undid our season, so now we have to throw like all the resources we possibly can at it to make sure that doesn't happen again. And sometimes teams do that and they fix that area, but then something else, a whole springs loose on the so maybe it's like that.
And we'll have Brad Spielberg next hour. I think I read somewhere today that the Bengals are in the best cap shape in the National Football League as of right now. So they've got to spend it. Will they spend it is another question, John. You're right. They always find ways to keep money in-house. But if they really want to take a shot at going back to the Super Bowl, a guy like Sam Marlowe would make some sense for that. All right, BLG, did see on your site, you tapped into the Inquirer as well. A couple of different sites are saying Howie Roseman more leverage as the general manager of the Philadelphia Eagles, certainly since he came back and took over from Chip Kelly when they put Howie away for a couple of years to go scour the globe on how to be a general manager. And he came back better for it, Super Bowl championship. And as of right now, maybe more leverage than he's had ever in the organization before. And that Jeff Lurie isn't as hands-on as he used to be. Well, Jeff Lurie would be the first one to tell you that he's never been all that hands-on a owner. Not sure we all believe that, but
just 3 times.
Three times.
And damn if he wasn't good on all 3 of those. Are you buying what they're selling? That Jeff Lurie has really put all of his eggs in Howie Roseman's basket and has total and utter faith? If he does, I think he's paid some dividends this offseason. But do you think that Howie is more in control? How much did the defections from the front office to the other organizations play into that?
Well, I wonder if we'd be seeing the same kind of report if the same thing was going on in theory, but like the offseason wasn't as critically acclaimed, maybe. Would we be seeing the same kind of leak? Like, oh, yeah, it's Howie making all the moves, and the moves aren't very popular. So, I had to kind of take things with a grain of salt and wonder whose agenda and who is, leaking what. But I will say, I think Eagles fans should hope it's true in the sense that I think the Eagles have needed kind of the Athletic and the Inquirer have both done really good reporting on basically, I think, a lot of dysfunction in the front office in the past. And I think part of that has been Howie maybe delegating too much and not collaborating in a way that I think is actual collaborating. Like, collaborating to me is not just everyone taking turns at random points. Like, let's just say, for example, the coaching staff getting their way when it comes to the Jalen Reagor pick. Like, to me, a collaborative process is, getting all the input from all sides, and then someone at the top, Howie Roseman, like making a decision based on that information. But he has to own the decision and not be able to just pass the buck on the coaching staff if they make a bad draft pick, like, again, Jalen Reagor. So it makes sense to me that he should be leading the charge and should be at the top, good or bad, because then if they do well, great, Howie gets all the credit. If they do poorly, okay, well, then who's the blame.
Yeah, it is interesting, Brandon. I've always, because I've had an issue with that, when Jeffrey pushes that collaborative word a lot, and he made a big deal when he went. I think people kind of forget when he brought Howie back, it was sort of like, we were all wondering, all right, he didn't call him general manager. And if you remember, Brandon, he kind of put him back, and then we didn't get to talk to him forever. And it kind of was like, it became osmosis. He just kind of morphed back into the position. And the big buzzword, the corporate buzzword, was collaboration. He's got to collaborate more. He's got to get along with people more. And I think there has been times over the years where he said, all right, you know what? I want Justin Jefferson. The scouts want Justin Jefferson, but Doug and the staff wants Jalen Reagor. Let's defer to them. Jeffrey Lurie, despite what he's saying, JJ Arthega, okay, let's defer to the owner. And then there's this sort of power vacuum that's developed because the Eagles have lost so many people. I think we're at 8 people. Now, some of them they didn't lose. They moved on from in the personnel department. So he almost has to make more decisions. Good thing or bad thing that the power is centralized. You mentioned somebody's got to make a decision. I'm with you. I like that. I want somebody to say, all right, I hear your voices, but I'm making the decision. Isn't that the way it has to be?
Yeah, I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. Like you can, have, again, a process where voices are heard. Everyone is I think you need people to feel like their input is being put in and you're gathering and collecting all that information and you're weighing it. But at the end of the day, the guy in charge or lady or whoever in charge has to make that decision. And yeah, so I think it's good to see Howie doing that. I think, again, it's funny to me that it's coming out at this time when everyone is praising their offseason. But to Howie's credit, I think, he's done a good job. And, let's be clear here. This is all on paper, too. The season starts and they're not winning games. Well, then all of a sudden, it wasn't that great of an offseason. So for now, things look good and it seems positive. But as you mentioned, John, like they've lost a lot of people. They still might lose Andy Weidel. We'll see if he's going to become the Steelers GM or not. So, there's a lot of work for Howie to still do, at least in terms of stocking that front office pipeline and making sure they don't really miss any beats there.
All right, BLG, I want to ask you to compare going forward a couple of Eagle draft picks from just 2 years ago, 2020. They took both Kevon Wallace and Davion Taylor. Taylor in the 3rd, Wallace in the 4th, in the same draft. Both have played sparingly over the 2 years here, way too much time on the injured list. They've done what they've done. They flashed when they flashed. They've been on the bench when they've been on the bench. The Eagles have made moves around their position accordingly. Which one's got a chance to still be part of the mix in 2023? I'm looking past 2022 to 2023. So you're factoring in what you think they're going to do in 2022. Which one has a better chance of being a contributing Eagle going forward past this year, Taylor or Wallace?
That's a good question. I'm going to say Taylor, in part because TJ Edwards and Kaiser White are both on the final years of their deals. So in theory, they could both be gone next year. And maybe Taylor steps up with Nakobe Dean. I think Taylor showed some promise in training camp last year early on. Now, didn't stay healthy and didn't prove it in the real games, really. So still much for him to prove. But I feel like I may have seen more potential out of him than I really ever have seen out of Kevon Wallace. And I know they have a big hole at safety, and there's an opportunity for him to step up there too. But I'll see it when I believe it more so with him. I really haven't seen that potential that makes me believe, okay, there's something here with him and he can step up into a starting role. So I'll say Taylor, and in part two, just because I think at the very least, Taylor might be able to help you out in special teams. I think that's another area where he's kind of shown some things, or at least offers a little bit more intriguing upside than Kevon Wallace does. So I'll go with him.
Let's talk about safety, Brandon, with Kevon Wallace. And you mentioned, I think we all agree, there's a big hole at safety, and there's the one noticeable hole on this team right now is at safety. But what is the bigger part of the hole, Marcus Epps or Anthony Harris? Because I think a lot of people default to Marcus Epps. I think Epsy is the ascending player, and Anthony Harris is the descending player.
I mean, the Eagles literally gave Anthony Harris a contract that is half the value than they did last year. They signed him to a 1-year, $5 million deal initially. They brought him back on a 1-year, $2.5 million deal. So not the best sign necessarily in terms of, a player and their value and how they performed last season and the demand for that player. So definitely something to consider there. Seems like a stopgap, at most. And then, I think there's potential for Epps. I still think ideally he's more of a spot starter, a role player who can kind of rotate in. I think he was one of your best 2 safeties. And then God forbid, he might be your best safety if someone gets hurt. If Harris gets hurt, that's not great. It's not ideal, but it's where they are right now. And it's hard to see anything changing because unless they trade for Jesse Bates, there aren't really or Chuck Clark maybe. It's not like there's a James Bradberry safety version on the market anymore. There's no like player like really intriguing out there that they can just sign. And I don't know if they're going to want to do that. It seems like they are high on Epps. I think maybe even more so than they were with their cornerbacks, clearly. And also Howie Roseman saying we have a higher position, or we have a higher view of that position than maybe the media does and everything. So I think there's some truth to that. Epps has been here for multiple seasons now. He's his role has grown. He's, for not being a full-time starter ever, he's gotten a decent amount of playing time. So it's not like he doesn't have experience under his belt, and that doesn't mean he'll be good. But it does mean it's not like he's being totally thrown to the wolves here and doesn't know what he's getting into. So we'll see.
BLG, my buddy and partner here, John McMullen, emphasizes this often, and he's right to do so. The fact that the Eagles, like every other team in the National Football League, I'm not singling out the Eagles, but everybody's got less time to evaluate talent before the first regular season game. Practices are shorter, cut back because of the collective bargaining agreement. Nick Sirianni et al., the entire organization, seemed to cut back on it even more so. That we don't have to do that much work. Science is telling us where guys are more healthy because we actually do less. There are only 3 preseason games, whereas we used to have 4 to be able to evaluate these guys. So it's a tougher job, and perception has to come more into the mix in putting together rosters and depth charts at specific positions, because they just don't have as much time to evaluate. Guys can't go out and win jobs the way they used to. And John harps on this, and he's right. It's accurate. So I'm going to ask you about the tight end position. We know Dallas Goedert is TE1. Who's TE2, TE3, TE4? We would love to be able to say, well, they're decided themselves on the field of battle, except they don't, because they practiced less and they've only got 3 preseason games. So perception's a big part of it. How do you rank the Eagles tight ends behind Goddard?
So if Tyree Jackson was healthy, I think he would be your tight end too. But alas, he's not. And I'm guessing he's going to start the season on the PUP list, which means he'll be out for at least 6 weeks. I think it's almost like a 2A and 2B with Jack Stoll and Grant Calcaterra, in terms of Jack Stoll's probably the better blocking tight end, which is significant for a team that I don't think they're going to run the ball as much as they were last year, where they were the heaviest run team in the NFL. But I still, that's going to be part of their attack for sure. And so he gets playing time there. And I think Calcaterra, based on his profile and kind of what he did at college, he probably has more pass catching chops. So I think, it could be like a mix of those kind of 2 skill sets and almost a rotation between those guys, as opposed to one guy just being totally out in front of the other just because of the varying skill sets there. So I would give Stoll the edge just because, he has more experience in the system. He's an older player. This will be his first full offseason, to really train in a full program and everything. So I'll give him the edge, but I think it's kind of a mix.
When we look at this team, Brandon, and we start looking at positions, we mentioned safety, obviously quarterback. Then you generally go to the depth. You just mentioned tight end. You got a great tight end, but you start wondering, we don't have much depth here. Can Grant Calcaterra step up? Can Jack Stoll get better? Any other positions you're kind of looking at and saying, okay, we might have a pretty good starter, but sprained ankle, somebody's out for 2 to 3, 4 weeks. Any other areas where you're concerned and saying, I'd like to have a little more depth here?
That's a really good question. It kind of speaks to the roster, I think, that they built up, that I don't really see that as much. No, obviously, so there's some positions I think that look better on paper necessarily than like linebacker. Like, we're just assuming that Nakobe Dean is going to come in and be awesome, and maybe he will. But again, there's a reason he fell, and I want to see how he holds up through training camp, and if he's out there every day, and he's not getting banged up and missing time, and how he adjusts to the NFL. So, until we actually see linebackers solved for the Eagles, and you just look at the history of their signings at that position, it's not like necessarily just based on history. Kaiser White should even be considered a lock to make the team or make it through the year based on, Eric Wilson and Zach
Corey
Brown.
Nelson. Paul Warlow.
Yeah, Paul Warlow.
Yeah.
LJ Fort was good, but
LJ,
didn't
yeah.
last. Yeah. So, like, let's see that happen before we just assume it's definitely going to be solved. I guess that's the position where, they have some nice things on paper, but it's so much, you got to prove it.
All right, BLG, last one for me. Aaron Siposs or bust? Will there be another punter brought into camp? If so, this week, next week, the week after, as soon as camp opens, week 2 of the preseason, week 1 of the NFL regular season. When will Aaron Siposs, and hey, I'm rooting for the guy. I hope he's phenomenal all year and the Eagles don't have to bring anybody else in, and he does the job all 17 weeks. You got to remember, Aaron, 17 weeks. He kind of checked out after week 9 for me last year. But will they have a competition there, or is it all Siposs?
I mean, they should. It's a little surprising that they haven't at least added, some undrafted rookie free agent or someone. I mean, he was really bad at the end of last year. I think he had something like an average of 37 yards per punt on his last 12 punts, basically since December started. So clearly the cold weather being an issue for him, although he still did struggle when he was down in Tampa in the playoffs as well, and it was not cold there. So that's a big hole because he was really bad at the end of the season. And I'm guessing the Eagles are kind of going to be paying attention closely to these teams that drafted punters and maybe kind of have interest in the veteran that they'll probably cut if it gets down to that point. So I definitely think that's a position they'll be looking at. It's funny, we're talking about the punter, but it is important because it was Siposs was really bad at the end of the last year. And I would think it would be crazy to just go into this year and think like, okay, he'll get better, or, that wasn't that big of a deal. No, it was a pretty big deal. And they definitely need to be looking for an opportunity to upgrade if it becomes available.
Well, I always tell Jody, Brandon, that it's the off season, so it's time to nitpick. So my last one, I'm going to nitpick even more. But I want to throw this out at you. And before I say this, I follow Brandon on Twitter at Brandon Gowton. Obviously, you can read him at bleedinggreennation.com. Listen to him at BGN_radio. Does about 40 podcasts are we up to, Brandon?
It's at least 3 a week. Yeah.
That guy nobody talks about. I was just thinking about this the other day. JAKIB Stevens, who was a late round pick, 6th round pick last year. Good safety at LSU. The Eagles transitioned him to linebacker. They obviously brought in all this talent at linebacker, Nakobe Dean, Kaiser White, TJ Edwards is coming off a really good season, maybe the most underrated player on this team. Davion Taylor, we mentioned. Why not move him back to safety? And if you don't move him back to safety, you have this sort of hybrid anyway. You can do it both, and then maybe play on special teams as well, because that was a hurdle for this team. Not just the punter, but the coverage units, the returners. Kind of an afterthought now. Should people be forgetting about JAKIB Stevens, or am I nitpicking in the offseason trying to come up with something?
No, I think that makes sense. I think I've thought about that too. I remember JAKIB Stevens when he got some playing time, very limited last year, probably, week 18.
Yeah.
Seemed to struggle with the physicality of the game a little bit, like being in the box and getting pushed around. So maybe you move him further away from the ball, and that would help him. Just because of the numbers crunch, like they have a lot of linebackers. The numbers, it's not even just like they don't have, like established options that you feel great about starting at safety, but just the numbers on the roster really aren't even there. And meanwhile, you have like 20 cornerbacks on the team. It's like, can any of those guys maybe move over? And maybe you move JAKIB Stevens over in too, at least to see if something shakes out there. So yeah, I'm on board with that, because I think like they were entering this offseason with this approach at cornerback, like, hey, we're just going to throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see if something sticks. I don't really get why they're not doing that at safety, especially now, because they kind of really need to find an answer there. And I think that approach would be good at that position. So we'll see if they do that or not. I'm going to guess he just sticks at linebacker, but I do think his best chance at making the team and sticking around could be more so at safety.
Last thing for me, it's not a question as much as it a point, a response to Brandon's answer to my question. You said the teams that drafted a punter, their veteran guy. Well, one of them already lost that veteran guy because Sam Koch retired, I believe, at the age of 39, was the Ravens punter, I believe, last millennium. Does he go back into the 1990s? Maybe it was only the mid 2000 and aughts. But hey, Randy Brown, you owe us one.
Yeah.
The former mayor of Marlton is kicking coach down there in Baltimore. Tell him where the best housing is in Marlton. If he needs to know, I can tell him. I got no problem bringing in a 39-year-old punter. Do you, BLG?
Well, don't the Eagles have that assistant, John, too? Who's
yes, the son. Come on, let's get this thing done here. Old Coke is good Coke.
Yeah,
I think that's true.
Randy calls it the Ravens Kicking Academy, which is the best and has been the best in the business. But he's flying high on Justin Tucker's reputation, Randy. Let's be honest. Yeah. Brandon and I could coach Justin Tucker. I'm just joking, Randy. Greatest kicker who ever lived.
And Sam Cook's been a damn good punter for the last 14 years. So
forget about Jesse Bates. Needs Sam Cook in here.
Yeah. There you go. Now we're cooking. Very good. BLG, good stuff. Always a pleasure whenever you get.
Thanks, Brandon.
John, thank you very much for getting up early with us today. We'll talk to you again in a couple weeks.
See you guys.
Bleeding Green Nation is his website. All Eagle fans should be checking in.
I got to bust in because I know we're going to break. I have some bad news. The Pro Football Focus booker booked Brad for 9:20 on the radio. So I had to push him back to 8:20 tomorrow. Okay. So we're not going to have Brad Spielberger today, unfortunately.
So he's on somebody else's radio show is more important than our.
It's more of the booker doing it, the Pro Football Focus booker doing it. I went straight to Brad, and he's got to defer to his boss.
Okay, that's fine. The booker,
disappointing, but we'll get him tomorrow morning, fresh 8:20.
Booker declares. That's fair enough. All right, J-Mac, McMullen and McDonald. We still got plenty to do. No Brad Spielberg joining us, but that's okay. We got an hour left to play. Got plenty of Eagle issues we still got to tackle here on Birds 365.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
At Action News, we cherish every moment, and it's our profound responsibility to bring you closer to your world. Never miss a moment. Trust the people at Action News.
In Philadelphia, we celebrated the miracle with pride only 5 years ago. And then the following morning, IBEW Local 98 members went back to work, building this city, rescuing our communities from decay, and inspiring the young men and women of the region to take pride in who we are. Like the Cats, Local 98 members believe in hope.
To learn more about who we are, what we do, and career opportunities with Local 98, visit us, IBEW98.org.
All right, did you know I was the Mommy Slam Dunk Champion?
Really?
Yes, really, don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake a mom. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the game. Go for the hits. Go for the fans. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Linebacker Matt guys here with you on Birds 365, a Monday morning edition. This would be the 280th time John McMullen and Jody McDonald have gotten together. Well, a couple of those. Johnny Mac had to report to camp and the like. I slept through one. So it isn't a full 280, but a damn close number to it. The show is aired 280 times with today's show being the 280th. Looking forward to doing it the rest of the summer into the Eagles season, where prospects are looking up. Peter King came out with his evaluation today, his first power rankings of the season. And I enjoy it. I got to be honest here. I can't badmouth power ratings because I look at them every single week. I try not to put too much stock into them, but it isn't that I'm just dismissive of and say, yeah, who the hell cares about power rankings? Because truth be told, they really do mean nothing. The games are played on the field, and the standings tell you where your power rankings are. Certainly months before the season starts, power rankings are just an opinion. And I think of Peter King's football opinion as an educated one. But the Philadelphia Eagles, 4th in the NFC, 9th overall in the National Football League. It's something that Eagle fans can and should get excited about. However, John, it does raise expectations.
Yeah.
And when expectations are raised, pressure is raised as well. And we are still looking at a quarterback who hasn't broken into the top 15 yet of quarterbacks statistically in the National Football League. How much pressure now is on Jalen Hurts if guys like Peter King are ranking them as a top 4 team in the NFC? How much is that pressure being ratcheted up?
Yeah, I think pretty significantly, and that's kind of what I mentioned a number of times with the expectations changing. And well, I don't necessarily know if it's a thing that is going to affect the Eagles, other than I have noticed. I've said this before. A couple when Howie was on with the Sports Take guys, he mentioned it, and he also mentioned it in some other interviews. I think he was on with it's either Eisen or Patrick, but Rich Eisen or Dan Patrick, and I apologize, I forget which one, but he kind of said tried to temper things, I guess would be the best way I would explain it, because I do think people are skipping steps and assuming. And Brandon brought up a name, and I know you love this player, and I like the player, and it's incredible value in the 3rd round. But I think what Brandon said about Nakobe Dean is 100% accurate. It's like a lot of people are just assuming this guy's going to hit the ground running. And it's interesting. I was doing, because I'm a TJ Edwards guy, and I think if Nakobe hits the field, it's going to be for Kaiser White, not TJ Edwards. But we'll see how that shakes out. But I was writing about TJ and Billy Boyce that will run today, and I went back to his. I think people don't remember how good a college player he was, and he was a final. He was an first team All-American. He was a finalist for the Butkus Award, which Nakobe won. And I went back to 2017 when TJ, I think, he was a runner-up to Roquan Smith, who was also a Georgia linebacker.
Right?
Who was a first-round pick, who is an incredible talent. And Roquan's been a really good player, but he's had his ups and downs. I mean, and he is a really high-level linebacker prospect when he was coming out of college. And there have been some real good moments with Chicago and some iffy moments with Chicago. My point is, even with high-level players, Devin White in Tampa Bay, another example. While they won the Super Bowl, he was phenomenal. Last year, he wasn't as good. These are really, really high-level prospects. Only thing I'm trying to point out, there are going to be hiccups. And I think too many people are penciling things in May and saying, this guy's going to be this guy's going to be that. there's got, even with the veteran players, the A.J. Browns, the Son Reddicks, the guys who aren't projections, there's going to be chemistry issues. Bradberry in that category as well. You got to get over those humps. So I do think there's going to be more hurdles than people expect. And look, it's May and people get excited in May. That's just part of the gig. But I do think, the more those expectations go up, the more disappointment there's going to be. And that on the back end, that creates trouble for the head coach and the team. It's just the way it works in the NFL.
Yeah, I think Nakobe Dean's going to be on the field. If he's healthy this year, he's going to be on the field a lot, whether it is inside, outside, who's coming off the field when he's on the field. I'm not 100% sure. We know they gave Kaiser White just a one-year deal, so they're not married to him long-term. I like that player too. I really like both the additions at linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles. But I think the most talented player in the bunch, even though he's never played a snap in the National Football League, is Nakobe Dean. And if he plays to the level that he played at in college, he's going to be a three-down linebacker on this team. Somebody's got to come off the field. I'm not sure how the defensive coordinator is going to ferret that out, but I just have such confidence in Dean's abilities that I think they're going to watch him play and go, we've got to have him on the field one way or another. If Edwards pays the price, so be it. If White pays the price, so be it. If they just go ahead and make Hassan Reddick a down defensive lineman rather than playing him at linebacker and play three other linebackers, so be it. I just don't think Nakobe Dean is coming off the field. That's how strongly I feel about the player. And yes, even though the former Georgia linebacker that you mentioned with the Bears was a first-round draft pick, Nakobe Dean was a better player in his year at Georgia than why am I forgetting the Bears linebacker?
Roquan
Smith.
Well, I will say this now, and that's what I was going to say. Look, I mean, Roquan was the 8th pick in the draft as a linebacker. I mean, from a talent perspective, it doesn't get much better than Roquan Smith. And by the way, if Nakobe Dean ends up being Roquan Smith, Eagles fans should be celebrating. But the point I bring up Roquan, because he's already been a 2-time second team All-Pro, not first team, but that's still pretty stinking good. Already through his first 4 years. But it hasn't been, Micah Parsons throughout. And by the way, I guarantee even with Micah Parsons, I guarantee there's going to be ebbs and flows. It's just the way it is. I mean, it is difficult to make that transition. If Roquan Smith has some hiccups, Nakobe Dean's going to have some hiccups. That's the only reason I bring him up, because he was such a high-profile player, a top 10 pick, and so was White in Tampa Bay as well. Top 10 pick, high-profile player. I mean, it's difficult to play in the NFL. That's all I'm trying to say. And rookies are going to have some growing pains. That's all I'm trying to say.
Right. And when you are as highly picked as those linebackers are, the expectations are that high. Even though Nakobe Dean fell down to the third round, because of either physical questions and or physical makeup. God forbid he's 5'11" playing linebacker in the National Football League. If you're not 6'2", you have no chance to be a linebacker. I would disagree. I think the kid is just a stone cold playmaker. I don't care if he's 2.5, 3 inches shorter than what the prototypic linebacker is supposed to be. You absolutely have to factor in where a player was drafted to their expectations their first year. And then after the first year is over and done with, you can reevaluate the expectations. And I expect Nakobe Dean to have a big enough year his first year that we're not even talking about, other than to give the Eagles props and credit for being able to grab a guy in the third round like Nakobe Dean. I'm not going to rate him as a third-round draft pick going forward. I'm going to rate him and set my expectation on what he does on the field in his rookie year, which I think is going to be a lot.
Well, if first of all, if he earns his way on the field, I'm with you. You know me. I have my FU players. If you're that good, F TJ Edwards, F Kaiser White. I'm all on board with that. If he earns his way on the field, my framework with this argument is, those, Roquan Smith, because and I bring him up because same year as TJ, kind of ruined the Butkus Award for TJ, top 10 pick. He's got all the physical attributes, and he's been a really, really, really good player for the Chicago Bears. But there are hiccups, and that's all I'm trying to say. And if the Eagles get Roquan Smith or Devin White with Nakobe Dean, Eagles fans should be thrilled. But I think in some ways, and here's the disconnect. Here's what I'm getting at, Jody. In some ways, they expect more, which is strange to me because he was so good in college. And more than he was so good in college, he was so high profile in college because he was the best player on the best defense. And, people are wondering, if you're the best player on the best defense, well, why is Walker going number 1 overall? Why is Jordan Davis going number 13 overall? Why is Lewis Cine a first-round pick? And on. They had 5 first-round picks. And why is Nakobe going in the 3rd round? He's the most high profile. He's the guy making all the plays. And they expect Roquan Smith. I don't know if you can expect Roquan Smith is what I'm saying.
No, I do. That's exactly what I'm expecting out of Nakobe Dean. I think he is. I think he had a better draft leading into the draft season than Roquan Smith did. Roquan Smith ended up going 8th. Nakobe Dean ended up going in the 80s. I think it was overstated injury issues that dropped Nakobe Dean down. I think it's misevaluation by the entire National Football League.
Well, they didn't misevaluate Roquan. They evaluated him dead on.
Right. No, I'm not talking about Roquan. I'm talking about Nakobe Dean. Because he's only 5'11" and a quarter rather than 6'2". Well, if you're not 6'2", you can't be a first-round draft pick. Yeah, you can. And I think he will prove that that's the case. I think they will get Roquan Smith-like production out of Nakobe Dean here. And let me again say about TJ Edwards. It was yours truly who during the year said, John, TJ Edwards is playing enough that he is playing himself into a position where the Eagles handle specific players specific way. They like to get an extension done. They like to jump in season, tack on a year or more if they like the player, if they like what he's doing, so that they don't have to face a free agent situation. If they can get something done in season, Howie Roseman's been doing this since he's been the general manager. And Edwards is playing well enough to be that kind of guy. Within 2 weeks, they had constructed a contract extension for TJ Edwards that took care of this upcoming season. So I'm a fan. I really am. It's one of those, what do you call it again? Oh, Sophie's Choice. Last year, they had their option to go with either Devontae Smith and or Justin Fields, 2 players who I just love coming out of the draft. I said, I'll be good with either of them. Usually the quarterback position is the more important, but if they take Devontae Smith, you're not going to hear any complaints from me. I love the kid. Same thing here with TJ Edwards and Nakobe Dean. I like TJ Edwards. I'm a very big fan. I suggested a contract extension for him last year. Then Nakobe Dean is the guy he could be competing with for playing time. I think he was the best linebacker in the draft. I don't know how he fell down to the 3rd round. I think it was a gift from God that the Eagles were able to get him there. Yeah, I like both players, but if one's going to keep the other one off the field, I think it will be more Dean keeping Edwards off the field than Edwards keeping Dean off the field.
Yeah, long term. I mean, remember, while the Eagles did give TJ, because TJ's a little bit different. This is what I wrote about, because TJ was undrafted. So he's not typically you get a 4-year deal if you're a rookie N'Kobe Dean is a 3rd-round pick, gets a 4-year deal. If you're a 1st-round pick, you get a 4-year deal plus a 5th-year team option. Undrafted free agents get 3-year deals. So TJ was supposed to be a restricted free agent this March if the Eagles didn't extend him. So what they essentially did, and, this is a good decision, they took away that restricted free agent. They essentially gave him his 2nd-round tender early. So he sort of overcame that, and he joked when we talked to him last week, he was 9th on the depth chart when he got here. He overcame that undrafted pedigree. You and I talk about pedigree all the time. We just took Roquan Smith, top 10 pick. N'Kobe Dean. These labels follow players. I talk about it all the time with Derek Barnett. Derek Barnett's a 3rd-round pick. He's fine. If he's a 1st-round pick, 14th overall, he's not fine. With TJ Edwards, undrafted kid, always. Nobody looks at, okay, All-American at Wisconsin, 1st-team All-American, best player on the defense, one of the best defenders in the Big Ten. We talk about production versus projection. Well, he had all the production in the world at the college level, but he ran a stinking 4.87. So he didn't get drafted. Not because of what he did at Wisconsin, because he ran a 4.87 in shorts. Now, the guy you see playing today does not run a 4.87. I don't know what he runs because nobody's sitting out there doing 40-yard dashes, because that's the other ironic thing, Jody. You never run another one.
Nobody ever runs a 40-yard dash after they leave Indianapolis.
No, exactly. Nobody gives a you-know-what, which is so funny why people put such a importance on it, and then they never run it again. All I can tell you is guys running 4.5s and guys running 4.6 who don't have TJ's instinctiveness play poorer pass defense than he does. And, it's not just me. Pro Football Focus, and thanks for taking Brad away from us, Pro Football Focus. But we'll get him tomorrow morning at 8:20. They graded him as the 10th best linebacker in football, better than Bobby Wagner, who's going to the Hall of Fame, better than Eric Kendricks, who I always talk about as the best pass coverage linebacker in football, better than Devin White, who I just mentioned, the 5th overall pick, who's already got a Super Bowl. He was better than all 3 of those players last year. And nobody noticed it, Jody. And I'm not saying nobody. You noticed it. I noticed it. But few people noticed it. And you know why? Because he'll always have that tag UDFA on his resume. And I always tell this story, and I'm going to tell it again, because one of the players I got to cover in my career was John Randall, who was not drafted when the draft, by the way, Jody, was 12 rounds long. 12. Not drafted, 8 all-pro nods later, not Pro Bowl, all-pro. You got to wait 5 years. He finally took the chip off his shoulder to put on a gold jacket. Now, I'm not saying that TJ Edwards is going to be a Hall of Fame player, because he's not. Right. But he never lost that UDFA tag, and he used it because all these people said he couldn't play. He was undersized. He couldn't do this. He couldn't do that. He couldn't do that. And he was just the best defensive tackle in football for 15 years. That label never leaves these players, and it blinds people. It blinds people. And I think so many people
hold on. How blind can people be if they keep voting them for all pro?
Well, no, I'm not talking about coaches or, eventually if you play to the level of John Randall, they're putting you on the field. I'm not talking about people like us who look at it. I'm saying fans are blinded to the expectation of he's a 1st-round pick. He's a 2nd-round pick. He's a 3rd-round pick. He's an undrafted free agent. TJ Edwards, again, with the film, and you could debate Pro Football Focus all you want. I think we both agree. If they say somebody's playing well, they're playing well. If they say somebody's playing poorly, they're playing poorly. The 10th best linebacker in football last year, Jody. He wasn't supposed to be.
I think he had a heck of a year. He did finish second to Alex Singleton on tackles on the team. And Alex Singleton, the Eagles were relatively willing to let walk away and join another organization. So, yeah, I think the Pro Football Focus ranking's a little high. I wouldn't have him quite that high. But he had a hell of a season. We'll agree on that.
And let me say, he didn't start. I think he did lead the team in tackles, but that doesn't matter.
No, Singleton led the team in tackles.
He started. He didn't start till I think week 6 because the Eagles felt Eric Wilson, because he could run a 4.45, was a better option than TJ Edwards. But if you can run a 4.45 and you take a false step, what does it matter?
Right.
What does it matter? And the Eagles, it took the Eagles, by the way, the Eagles deserve to take a hit for this. It took them 5-6 weeks to figure out TJ Edwards was better than Eric Wilson. There's a perfect example, Jody.
And I don't think it was that TJ Edwards jumped off the page. It was the fact that Wilson stunk. They got around to looking at the tape and analyzing, going, I know we gave this guy money as a free agent, but he's really not getting the job done for us here.
Well, and I
kind of
told
obligated to put the best player out there, and that would be TJ Edwards, not Wilson.
Yeah, and if they were watching Birds 365, they would have knew Eric Wilson stunk because I knew it. How did they not know?
You said before the season ever started, the guy just is terrible on run defense. He just can't do it. Is one of the worst fill the void linebackers in the National Football League on run defense. And teams ran the football down the Eagles' throats the first 5 weeks or 6 of the season. Now, one position does not determine whether you're good against the run or not good against the run, but middle linebacker might be the most important one of those. And yes, they got significantly better against the run when Edwards came in and became their middle linebacker. You are 100% accurate about that.
Now, we still got to prove it again because he's an undrafted guy and people are already replacing him. But all I said, and that's what I wrote, don't be surprised if we're hopefully talking here next year, Jody, and we're talking about the same thing because TJ Edwards is going to be the Eagles' starting linebacker. Now, Nakobe Dean's going to be probably their other starting linebacker. As I said, I think it's more Kaiser White than Nakobe Dean versus TJ Edwards. But yeah, I mean, sometimes they miss. Sometimes the NFL misses, and I think they missed on TJ Edwards.
Mac guys, here we are on Birds 365. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We've still got 30-plus minutes of football talk left on Birds 365.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Android TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
The big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
In Philadelphia, we celebrated the miracle with pride only 5 years ago. And then the following morning, IBEW Local 98 members went back to work, building this city, rescuing our communities from decay, and inspiring the young men and women of the region to take pride in who we are. Like the Cats, Local 98 members believe in hope.
To learn more about who we are, what we do, and career opportunities with Local 98, visit us, ibew98.org.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass. Free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit. The glass is for cocktails, right?
It's for this, 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 and that.
Is the length of the glass equal to your...
You betcha.
But is it made out of...
Glass?
Okay, but is the rib...
Smooth?
Will you stop doing...
That?
I'm the professional here.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. All from the company that's highly awarded. 0 carbs, 0 sugar, and deliciously tasting vodka. So good, it just disappears.
He's John McMullen. I would be Jody McDonald. We appreciate you streaming into the deep end with us here on Birds 365, a Monday edition. Had some fun talking to Brandon Lee Gowton from Bleeding Green Nation in hour number 1. Available. You can go back and watch it anytime you want here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. And by the way, while you're at it, feel free to punch that like button for us. Like, subscribe, and share. Another guy who covers the Eagles, Jeff Knox, who we've had here on the show. We got to get Jeff on again sometime soon. I had an interesting post on his website, Inside the Eagles, that I got to tell Jeff I'm sorry, I disagree with. He postured a contract extension for Brandon Graham. BG coming back from the major injury last year of his contract. As I talked about Edwards, Howie Roseman, well on record is liking to get contract extensions done on the Eagles' timeline rather than the players' timeline. He's been very good at that. Why would you extend Brandon Graham? The Eagles did show you, again, judging by their past performance, when they need to be strict, the Eagles can be strict. Fletcher Cox is one of the best defensive linemen to ever put on a Philadelphia Eagle uniform. This offseason, they cut him only to resign him to a new contract at $14 million. So no pity parties and or GoFundMe pages necessary for Fletcher. But they did cut him and took a cap hit in the future for letting him go and then re-signed him, because they didn't want to continue to carry Fletcher's salary going forward. And Brandon Graham is older than Fletcher. And Brandon Graham has been more hurt than Fletcher. I love Brandon Graham as much as the next guy. He was a key contributor to the Eagles championship run. He has been a leader in the locker room since the day he showed up from Michigan. And he is one of the much needed leaders in the locker room right now. There's no chance they're looking to add another year to Brandon Graham this year. Is there, Johnny Mac?
No. Brandon's 34 years old. Now, Jody, I will say, now, will they put voidable years? Now, if you want to do that type of bookkeeping, like we just talked about with James Bradberry, and we mentioned, 1-year deal for $10 million is how. Oh, no. They put the voidable years on the back end, and technically it's a longer contract on paper, so you can make the cap hit $2.278 million or whatever it is, somewhere in that range. Brandon is, and they've done this before, and he's currently under contract through, I'm just trying to pull it up here, through his age 38 season, 2026, because of all the voidable years on the back end of his contract. So will they restructure and do something like that? You never know, to try to kick off some money to later years in the cap. But as far as what the average fan would think of as an extension, no. You're not extending a 34-year-old player. You might do some bookkeeping tricks.
Right. You move money around, and that's why we wanted to have Brad Spielberg on today. And Brad couldn't join us, so you say he's gonna do it tomorrow, right?
Yeah, tomorrow, 8:20.
Right, because he understands and explain the way moving money around under the cap can be done. They gave Jane Bradberry a $7.5 million contract with achievable incentives and can take them to $10 million. But it's only counting $2 million and change here in this first year. Well, how do they do that? Voidable years, back end of the deal. Brad understands that stuff and will explain Bradberry and other contracts like Brandon Graham's to us when we get him up here tomorrow. Like, yeah, Brandon Graham's only counting $1 and change million under the cap this year, but he's got a $10 million number or something ridiculous like that. That's how they do it. They put it off until future years when eventually you got to pay the price. Sooner or later, you do have to pay the price of adding these voidable years and just pushing the contract out. This is going to be Brandon Graham's last year in an Eagles uniform, isn't it?
If I had to bet, I would say yes, which is, disappointing because I don't think there's ever been a more fun player to cover than Brandon Graham. So from that standpoint, and by the way, really good player who overcame a lot early in his career. Was why didn't the Eagles take Earl Thomas or Jason Pierre-Paul? He's terrible. He's this, he's that. And all of a sudden became a late bloomer. I always tell the story. BG thought he was getting cut for Travis Long when Chip Kelly was here. That's how bad it was. And all of a sudden things clicked and he turned into one of the best two-way defensive ends in football. We all know, I say it's the most important play in modern franchise history, at least since, 1960, when the strip sack of Tom Brady. Obviously, the Philly special gets more hype, but I thought the strip sack was more important to winning that actual game. Everything about Brandon Graham is great. If you could get 53 Brandon Grahams, he's one of those guys. You would do it. Awesome in the locker room. Tremendous personality. Unfortunately, it's a young man's game, except for Tom Brady. We always put that guy. It's a young man's game. And Brandon knows it. And this is probably his last year. I think he's hoping for another year because he always says he wants to get to 15. I think he's at 13, so he wants 2 more. I don't know if he's going to get there here.
And once the season starts, we'll see how often he's infused into the lineup, if he is making any plays and earning his keep. Not that his keep is that great. It's all his future money going forward that the Eagles have put off, as you say, to the 2027 season. Damn, he's under contract for a long time with these voidable years. Don't expect Brandon Graham to be playing all the way until the end of his current contract. How are we going to be able to judge what BG's got left in the tank? As I gave you credit earlier in the show, it's that much less time they spend on the practice field. There isn't really as much earning of the job as there used to be. We like to think of the NFL as a meritocracy, except when do you merit actually earning more playing time? Until they actually get the season underway, it's kind of speculatory. How do you judge BLG? Are you guys going to be able to get any? You just take the coach's word for it? Are you going to be able to get any read at practice this summer? He's one of those veteran guys. Anytime there's going to be a veteran day, BLG's cashing that ticket. He's not going to be out there in shorts.
Well, BLG might do it too, but BG might.
By the way, Brandon Lee Graham, he's BLG too.
Yeah.
Same exact last name, middle name.
I didn't even know that. Is that true?
Yeah.
Is that his middle name?
Yeah.
See, I didn't even know that. I'm learning things, Jody.
I think Brandon told us that here on the show.
Oh. Maybe I was trying to rebook a guest when he told us that. Who knows? You got to do things on the fly. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, he's gonna even more so this year. He's gonna have maintenance days, I would think, trying to get him to the regular season. as healthy as possible. I think the bigger thing is, how much is he going to play? We're talking about paper because that's all we're talking about this time of year and how things look good on paper. Peter King's got him at number 9, and this guy's going to do this and this guy's going to do that. Well, on paper, I would think the Eagles' edge rushers are going to be in key situations. So 3rd and long, they're going to be Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick. And then you're going to have Javon Hargrave on the field inside. And who else? Is that going to be Fletcher Cox? Or are you going to kick Brandon Graham inside? So in many ways, it might be, as far as the so-called NASCAR package, it might be a decision between Fletcher Cox or Brandon Graham and who gives you more of a pass rush inside, which would be ironic for many reasons because those two have been the engine of this defense for a very, very, very long time.
There are certain guys on the defensive line that I'm fans of, other guys that you full well know, not as big a fan of. Derek Barnett. Let me comp 2 guys here, different type players, but both Eagles defensive linemen. Who do you think gets more snaps this year? Milton Williams or Derek Barnett?
Oh, that's a good hypothetical, Jody. That's your wheelhouse. Wow, that is a tough one.
Yeah, it's close.
I want to default to Derek Barnett's only because, Milton's kind of buried now. They have so much depth on the defensive line. It's one of the reasons they're number 9. You start talking about, I just mentioned Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis in the middle. So right away he's the 4th defensive tackle, right? But he's got some versatility to play defensive end as well. But on the edge, you have BG, you have Josh Sweat, you have Hassan Reddick. Now, the fact that Reddick can play Sam linebacker in some early downs might help a little. But boy, it's going to be tough for Milton Williams to get playing time. I just don't see a path, so I have to default toward Derek Barnett. Now, injuries could affect all of this.
Always
obviously.
does, yeah.
Yeah, it always does. But if everybody stays healthy, which obviously is pie in the sky, I don't know how Milton gets on the field a ton, and it's not because of anything he's done or he's not a high level player, but you got to get Hargrave on the field. You got to get Davis on the field in early downs. You got to get Fletcher on the field. Where do you put him? Where do you get him out there?
The reason why I asked the question, because we were talking about Brandon Graham, and that's what it comes down to for me. If Brandon Graham is going to play more defensive end, then guess what? Milton Williams will be on the field more than Derek Barnett. But if they're going to ship Brandon Graham inside, which they do plenty, they have over his entire career. That's one of the things that made Brandon Graham as valuable a member of the Eagles as he has been, because of his flexibility, whether you're using him outside and or bringing him inside, and him being able to get a pass rush from the middle, depending on who he's out there with. I think that'll determine who plays more out of those 2 guys. If Brandon's going to play purely on the outside, which they may at this stage of his career and the injuries that he's had, it certainly is more physically tasking to play inside than it is outside. I would judge by where Brandon Graham lines up will have a big influence on how much Milton Williams is going to get a chance to play. And one guy who's, I don't know if he's ever going to see the field, you know him better than me because you're down there at practice. Could you pick last year's other defensive tackle draft pick out of a line? I don't know that I could pick Marlon out of a lineup.
Marlon T, yeah, Marlon's up against it from a number standpoint. Teron Jackson, though, is a guy who got at defensive end, got some playing time and did okay. He's kind of buried as well. It's the old. I mean, they're really, really deep on the defensive line now. I don't think Marlon's in the conversation, but I do think Tehran is. And it's going to be tough for those young guys to get a lot of snaps. But you know what? Sometimes it's not just about 2022. We're thinking about 2023, and you probably are you might be turning the page on Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox, and all of a sudden by 2023, then Milt Williams falls into the position. So he might have to wait his turn, but he'll get his turn. But right now it's going to be tough for him to get a ton of playing time.
And they do have depth on that defensive line and on the offensive line, which Brandon brought up. And when I say Brandon, I don't mean Graham. I mean Gowton. Both Lees. Yes, I did look it up. Brandon Lee Gowton, Brandon Lee Graham. Same exact middle name.
BLG, our BLG has better length than BG.
Which is saying a lot because it's not like Brandon Graham's a little guy in any way, shape, or form. Just BLG Gowton is as tall as he is. He talked about Isaac Seumalo being included in an Eagles deal to maybe get Jesse Bates if Cincinnati acknowledges, damn, we could have won the Super Bowl if we had a little bit better offensive line. And Isaac would certainly fill that role for them. You correctly pointed out the Bengals don't like playing people. And Isaac gets paid a good chunk of change for not being readily available to be on the field with the injuries had the last couple of years. I don't think Isaac Seumalo is going to end up in Cincinnati for a different reason. I think the Eagles still like him. I think he's going to get.
I know Stoutland likes him a lot. Yeah,
he's not. They're not going to move him. And I know Sua Opeta is the Tesla stock of the Eagles offensive line. And Jake Driscoll is the head coach is a fan of Jake Driscoll. Oh, I'm going to fall with the offensive line coach on this one. I think Jeff Stoutland is going to have a lot to say on who the Eagles starting offensive line is. If Isaac is rehabbing correctly, and again, it's one of those, how do you judge it kind of things? Because the Eagles haven't worked out all off season. And when they do start to officially work out, how much are they actually going to work out? How much is a veteran like Isaac actually going to be asked to work out? I think he's going to be here. I think he's going to be the right guard for this team this year. I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't think he's getting cut. I don't think he's getting traded. I think he's getting his, right next to Kelsey and lining up and starting for the Eagles this year.
I think he will start as, it'll be very similar to last year. Last year was Andre Dillard versus Jordan Mailata at left tackle. I think it's going to be a legitimate competition. And if you remember all the way back, Andre Dillard, they would rotate each day. But Andre Dillard got the first chance, and then until he got hurt, then Jordan kind of took off and took the job, and the rest is history. Isaac will get the first opportunity, but they like Jack Driscoll a lot, and Jeff Stoutland likes Jack Driscoll as well. And Jack played very well at right guard last year till he got hurt. Now he's got injury concerns as well.
I was going to say, he didn't make it through the season either.
Second straight year, too. He's only 2 for 2. He's had injury concerns in both years as well. So we talked about Isaac playing only 9 games. Well, Jack Driscoll's had some injury concerns. So maybe the easy answer is you need both. But Jack is cheaper. And, before they cut Nate Herbig, I started to think, well, maybe they might move on from Isaac Seumalo just because of the price tag. But from the Cincinnati perspective, and I brought up with BLG as well, one part is the finances, but also people forget they went out and paid Alex Kappa, the ex-Bucks guard, and that was a big deal in Tampa Bay when Tom Brady retired for 48 hours, whatever it was, Jody. A little bit more than that, but you get it.
Wasn't 48 days.
No. And they signed Lyle Collins from the Cowboys, and I think there was a third. I Ted Karras from New England. They brought in 3 offensive linemen. So they're not as bad as they were when you last saw them in the Super Bowl. They targeted that position in free agency and brought in 3 legitimate offensive linemen. All of them can play guard. Now, obviously, Cap is a good guard, a good NFL guard. Karras, I think, is more of a center. I think they have penciled in at center, and Lyle Collins is more of a right tackle, but he can play guard as well. I don't think they have as big as a need as people think they do. And I just don't think they want to add another big salary to the big salaries they were, because they gave Cap and Collins money. They gave them money. So I just don't think it's a fit that other people do.
Right, nor do I. I think it's a little overstated. I think it's people trying to come up with a package that makes some sense to be able to get Jesse Bates here. Eagle fans, I told you the Eagles should go after James Bradberry. I told you it was a really good fit. I told you that he was being underrated on the open market because he didn't make it to the open market till late. And damn if the Eagles didn't deliver you James Bradberry. Get off the Jesse Bates train. It's not happening.
Get on the Clark train. That, if you can convince Baltimore, that's more realistic.
Absolutely more realistic. Bates is I don't think going anywhere. I don't think Cincinnati wants to give it up. Number 2, he's got a contract in place. The franchise tag is attached. If he doesn't show up and doesn't play, he doesn't get paid. And I don't know that he's the kind of guy who's really going to test the temerity of the Cincinnati Bengals. Oh, yeah, I'll stay home. He hasn't made that much money in his career that he can afford to stay home. I think push comes to shove, he's going to push on in to Cincinnati, and I don't think the Bengals, coming off a Super Bowl appearance, if the Bengals had finished 3-14 this past year,
like usual,
we're going nowhere fast, then I might say they go, yeah, we don't need these headaches. Let's just get a couple let's get draft picks. Let's save some money. Yeah, I think that could play. They were in the Super Bowl last year. I don't think they just go, oh, woe is us. We're the Bengals. We can't afford to keep them. Let's just trade them for the best package we can. No, they're the defending AFC champions. I don't think they just do the usual Bengal logic of backing off and giving up. I think they hold the fort on this kid and say, no, if you don't want to play, then guess what? You don't get paid.
Yeah, and this assumption that they drafted Dax Hill, I think at 31. Yeah, they were 31, 31st overall. Good player. But the assumption, again, I kind of said it with the Eagles and their draft picks. The assumption somebody's going to come in and just be that kind of player right away is just, I don't get it. I don't get why people think. Same thing with Tennessee losing A.J. Brown. And they draft Treylon Burks. Oh, he'll step right in. Yeah. No, he won't. No. Dax Hill, he'll step right in. No, he won't. Maybe they're good players down the road, 2-3 years. I'm not saying that's not possible. But they're taking a step back in situations like that. So don't be assuming that Cincinnati's saying, oh, we'll just put Dax Hill in for Jesse Bates and have the same production. I don't think that's their thinking either.
Oh, I think it's exactly their thinking. The problem is that sometimes it's flawed logic, that guys do need to grow into jobs in the National Football League. They just don't come off their college campus and play to the level of a All-Pro Bowl / All-Pro player a guy like Jesse Bates is. There'll be a drop-off in Cincinnati, and I think they have to know that, but they're willing to take that drop-off in this case. Better than having the cupboard bare, they do have a legit replacement ready to be plugged in. Not as good, bank on the drop-off, but not, oh my God, all the way to the floor. That's why I think Cincinnati is going to hang tough with them. And yes, if the Eagles came and said, we'd give you a first-round draft pick plus, then you got yourself a deal. I don't think there's any way the Eagles are giving up a first-round draft pick for Jesse Bates.
No, because they have a C-plus quarterback, Jody. So they need that second first-round pick next year, just in case.
They need the safety net. John McMullen, Jody McDonald, your Mac and Mac guys. We'll come back, put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
At Action News, we cherish every moment, and it's our profound responsibility to bring you closer to your world. Never miss a moment. Trust the people at Action News.
In Philadelphia, we celebrated the miracle with pride only 5 years ago. And then the following morning, IBEW Local 98 members went back to work, building this city, rescuing our communities from decay, and inspiring the young men and women of the region to take pride in who we are. Like the Cats, Local 98 members believe in hope.
To learn more about who we are, what we do, and career opportunities with Local 98, visit us, IBEW98.org.
All right, did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really, don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, I go to left, fake a mom. Mama, go up, up, up.
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the game. Go for the hits. Go for the fans. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Monday edition of Birds 365, kicking off another Eagles week here on the channel. Appreciate you streaming in with us. While you're at it, hit the like button. Give us a little leg up with our algorithm or whatever the hell the YouTube designation is that says the show is doing well. Still don't understand it, but I do understand and enjoy working with my partner every single week. I do need to ask you a question about a former Eagle coach, Joe John, before we wrap this bad boy up. I don't know if I'm impressed or just perplexed by a stance being taken. It hasn't happened yet. It's just speculation at this point, but pretty strong speculation about an ex-Eagle coach. Frank Reich, who the Eagles were able to, yes, I'm going to say it, suck in to take Carson Wentz off their hands last year. Frank was foolish enough to do so. We know how the season went. We know how the season ended. We know how it went after the season was over and done with. Sounded to me like Frank Reich was ready to go back one more year with Carson Wentz. And the big boss, the owner, kind of stepped in and goes, no. We need ourselves a new, get this Wentz guy out of here. And credit to their general manager, he actually got something back in the trade, more so than I thought he was worth for what kind of season Carson Wentz had. It did not go well. The 1 year of Carson Wentz in Indianapolis, taking on an ex-Eagle quarterback in Indy to get them to the playoffs, didn't happen. Now, I know this is a smaller stage we're talking about because it's the backup quarterback, but it looks like they may revisit again Frank Reich ready to sign on Nick Foles as the backup quarterback in Indianapolis. Now, one of the things Matt Ryan has been for the majority of his career, pretty damn healthy. He has not been an off-injured quarterback. We do have quarterbacks like that in the league. Guys you factor in a couple of missed games every single year. Shoot, I thought they were going to have to do that for Carson Wentz last year. And damn if you didn't play the whole season. Probably unfortunately so for the Colts, so they never actually got hurt. But I expect Matt Ryan to stay healthy and stay their starting quarterback all year. Smart move, questionable move, dumb move by the Colts to bring in.
I've said it a while. I have no problem with anybody bringing Nick Foles in to be a backup quarterback. I think he's one of the best backup quarterbacks there is. I think it was proven here. I think he was a closer. I don't know why everyone argues about this. I always compared it to Mariano Rivera with the Yankees. You need the starter. Nick Foles isn't the starter. Rivera's not going to start for you, but he damn well closed it for you. And he closed it better than anybody really has ever done when it comes to that Super Bowl run. But the Eagles needed 11-2-1, and they needed the great starter to hand the baton to the great closer. So I have no problem with Nick Foles as backup as long as it's not in Philadelphia, because there's too much pressure on the starting quarterback if Nick Foles is in Philadelphia. That doesn't exist in other places, so I have no problem with it. The only issue for the Colts, Matt Ryan's 37. He's aging. Still can play. He'll be an upgrade over Carson Wentz, but he's 37. At some point, when you have a quarterback at that age, and when you're the Colts, by the way, and you've gone through quarterback after quarterback after quarterback due to some bad luck, in the case of Andrew Luck and Jacoby Brissett held it down for a year, and on and on and on. You have to stop this different quarterback every year at some point. I know they still have Sam Erlinger. It's a 6th-round pick, I think. So he's not a long-term answer. They didn't draft a quarterback. I think they brought in the Notre Dame kid, Jack Cohn. He's not the answer. So they needed a backup quarterback, but man, they should try to get some kind of developmental project in there. Maybe they think Ellinger is that guy. But I don't have any problem with Nick Foles as a backup quarterback at all.
And I just thought it was a nervy move. And Frank Reich is involved. I don't know if he is the driving force, but he certainly got a hand in on this. His first year there, Frank Reich made the playoffs, won a playoff game, got beaten the second round by the Chiefs and Mahomes. And 3 years since, 2 years out of the playoffs, 1 year in, eliminated in the first round. How odd is Frank Reich's seat going into his 5th year as head coach of the Colts?
I'll tell you what, we mentioned Peter King to start the show, so I'll mention him to end the show. I think he had the Colts at 21, so he's somebody who's expecting a big tick back. I don't necessarily agree with it. I expect the Colts to be better with Matt Ryan. So if he has a bad season, I think it gets pretty hot. I think then it gets really, really hot. But I expect him to have a good season. Now, the problem is the AFC seems to be a lot tougher,
right? A
lot deeper than the NFC. You're probably going to have to win that division, I would think. Now Tennessee is taking a step back. They'll be the favorites still. I don't think they're going to be a bad team, though. And I think they're going to be on the cusp of a playoff berth. If they fall off the table, then I think there's some serious issues. But how do you fall off the table with Matt Ryan and Jonathan Taylor? I think they're a better football team, not 21. That was I mentioned Indianapolis, but we were talking about the NFC. Indianapolis and Arizona. I was like, I don't see the drop-offs that Peter sees for those two teams.
Yeah, I think it's more of a statement. I'm more with you on Indianapolis than the Cardinal one, because the Cardinal one, as I said way back hour in the morning, if you missed it, that's just a prediction that they're going to have quarterback issues, that Kyler Murray's either going to hold out or not play or not show up till in season. Oh, by the way, DeAndre Hopkins out till week 7 for 6 weeks, and the Eagles play them early enough that they're going to miss DeAndre Hopkins. So I see where Peter's coming from, but I think it's purely a prediction on Murray not being their quarterback for all 17 games this year. Colts not as much, and you're right, they were 9-8. They did just miss the playoffs last year, so coming back to 21 would be a slight step backwards. I don't know that I see that either, but if it does happen, I think
then he could be in trouble. But I think they got better at quarterback. I really do. Now, other people, if you think Matt Ryan's got nothing left, then maybe he's got an issue. I didn't necessarily, obviously a bad team, Atlanta, but not necessarily because of Matt Ryan. He was still playing at a pretty high level. So, and 37, the way he plays the game, I don't think that's an issue.
But I do believe that, again, trying to speculate here on Peter's line of thinking, there's a couple teams in the AFC that have gotten better and maybe moved past the Colts, like the Denver Broncos, because they've had a guy like Russell Wilson. We shall see. All right, J Mac, it is the 2 hours have come and gone. Went by like a house of fire. I say we try this again in 22 hours. Brad Spielberg's going to join us, and Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News. Figure we get a giant guy on, give us a little bit more information about the newest Eagle cornerback, James Bradberry, see how Big Blues offseason is going. Give you my opinion, not great, but that's just one man's opinion. We'll get a more educated one with Pat Leonard tomorrow. We'd be back and do this in 22 hours. You up for it, McMullen?
Let's do it.
Mac and Mac coming back in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.